Hey, this is Trey, and I am actually in Wisconsin, beautiful Wisconsin, Milwaukee, for the Republican National Convention. And today is Monday, although you will not hear this on Monday. So by the time you hear it, nominee Donald Trump will have likely already picked his vice presidential running mate. So I don't know who it is, don't have any inside knowledge. Would just make a couple of observations. I mean, the nominee's entitled to pick whoever he or she feels most comfortable running with. Former president has said that the two criterion that he is looking for are number one, the ability to take over should the need emerge to run the country. And number two, someone that shares his ideological belief structure. I would ask, no one's asked my opinion, but sometimes I do volunteer it, even though it isn't asked. I think in light of recent events, the presidential immunity ruling from the Supreme Court, the very, very near assassination on Saturday, the assassination attempt that was unsuccessful really by a matter of inches, that the nominee, the former President Trump, is in a unique position to pick the person he wants to pick, but also has a chance for an electoral victory, the likes of which we have not seen since Ronald Reagan. I think all the trends are heading in the right direction for him. And if you listen to this podcast or watch the television show or know me at all, you know that Tim Scott is someone I'm very high on. Marco Rubio, I've known for a long time. Tom Cotton, Mike Pompeo, John Ratcliffe. I don't know Governor Burgum. I don't know J.D. Vance. I've actually never met either of them. That may change at some point. Again, Donald Trump can pick whoever he feels most comfortable running with, but there is an opportunity to reach beyond those that you already have. I was talking to a friend of mine in the U.S. Senate, and he kind of stated the obvious, which is your supporters can only vote for you once. It doesn't matter how passionate they are. It doesn't matter how enthusiastic they are. They only can cast a single vote for you. So if politics is a game of addition, who can actually make that tent broader? Who can appeal to folks that maybe need a nudge, maybe need a push? So it will be fascinating. And again, by the time you hear this, he will have already made his pick, and he's the nominee. He's entitled to pick whoever he feels most comfortable running with. I just think that he has this arguably once-in-a-generation opportunity, given recent events, given polling, given his current opponent, to really do something almost Reagan-esque. And I say that because winning the Electoral College earns you the right to govern. And that is no small thing. You're the President of the United States. You're the chief of the executive branch. It earns you the right to govern. If you're seeking a mandate, if you're seeking transformational change, if you're seeking to fundamentally remake America in a better, more prosperous, safer way, that requires more than just simply narrowly running the Electoral College gauntlet. I'm thinking in my recent past, Ronald Reagan obviously won the popular vote and the Electoral College. George W. Bush once won the popular vote and the Electoral College. But that's only two presidents since I was in college that I can think of that won both the Electoral College and the popular vote. And you don't have to win both, but there's no rule or law that says you can't. And sometimes who you pick as a running mate reflects something or tells us something about who you are and how you view the country. So I'm hopeful that it will be an inspired pick. Obviously, a man or a woman capable of stepping in should the need arise, someone that shares the nominee's ideological belief structure, core ideology, but also someone who brings things to the table that aren't currently at the table. Now, for what I really wanted to talk about, I was on air with two of my favorite people in the world this morning, Dana Perino and Bill Hemmer, when news broke that a judge in Florida had issued an order in the documents case, also known as defense material, also known as possession of classified documents. Special Prosecutor Jack Smith's prosecution in Florida, Judge Eileen Cannon issued her order literally while we were on air. And the good news for me is I spent 3 years in law school talking about cases I had not actually read. And there's a special talent to be able to talk about cases that you haven't read. So I was uniquely well positioned to do it. I was trying to read the opinion during commercial breaks on my phone, but I'm so old and my eyesight's so bad, I was having a hard time doing that. I should have had one of my kids with me that can actually read the tiny print on the phone. But I can break it down to you like this. Do y'all remember Ken Starr, God rest his soul? Ken Starr was what we call independent counsel, and that was a statutory creation. Congress created independent counsel, and then that statute lapsed and was never renewed. So put that in one bucket. Special counsel, not independent counsel, special counsel is not a statutory creation. That emanates from Department of Justice regulations. So it is Regulation 600, if memory serves me correctly, and you can go read it and should read it for yourself. Special counsel is warranted if there is a conflict of interest in a criminal matter that requires either further investigation or prosecution. So there must be either a real or perceived conflict of interest with the current Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General. And then, so where do you look next? You look at all the U.S. attorneys that we have in the country, and there are scores of them. There are dozens and dozens of U.S. attorneys. You look at your deputy or assistant attorney generals to see whether or not someone can take over if you have a conflict. But that's not what Merrick Garland did. He did not go to someone like a John Durham, who was already a sitting U.S. attorney or had already been approved by the U.S. Senate. He didn't even go to a Bob Mueller. Now, Bob Mueller, I believe, was in private practice at the time he was picked to be special counsel, but he had been confirmed by the Senate twice, once as a U.S. attorney and once as an FBI director. So he had been Senate confirmed. Unless I missed something, Jack Smith has never been Senate confirmed. So you have a private citizen empowered by a DOJ regulation that was never passed by Congress, never signed into law. So you take that Chevron opinion, Raimondo, which kind of overruled Chevron, which kind of cast a skeptical eye at the whole administrative state, and then you couple that with the reality that the special counsel regulation is not a statutory creation. It is truly just that. It is an administrative regulation, and it makes you wonder how we got to the point where a private citizen is empowered to investigate a major political candidate. So here's what I would ask you to do. And I know this sounds naive, and I don't mean to sound naive, but read the DOJ regulations. Read what is required to appoint special counsel, and then ask yourself, is there not a better way? Why not have Congress get involved? Why not have it pass the House, the Senate, be signed into law? If you don't want to go back to independent counsel, that's fine. But at least don't allow something as important as the investigation of a presidential candidate to be conducted by someone who has not been vetted by either House or Senate and is essentially a private citizen who happens to have vast prosecutorial power, discretion, and nearly limitless resources. So, those are the dominant things on my mind. I would add, finally, just because we have a tendency in this country sometimes, and necessarily so, human nature does not like to dwell in darkness. We don't like to dwell where things are sad. We want to move on. We're kind of wired to move on. But before we move on, we need to make sure we have all the facts. We are merely days removed from an assassination attempt on a former president who is the leading candidate to be president again. And so I'm going to reiterate that we should gather all the facts. And it may well be that Congress can investigate Secret Service themselves, and I have tremendous respect for law enforcement, but no one is immune from investigation. We need to know how someone could scale the top of a building with a long gun and take a shot at the head of a former president. Maybe Congress can do that. Maybe it requires an outside law firm. Maybe it requires a fresh set of eyes. But we need to know how that happened. And I was reminded, because I'd almost forgot, getting bills signed into law is not easy, and that is not the way I judge success when it comes to people who have served in Congress. I have colleagues who never had a bill signed into law, and I still viewed them to be successful. But it may have been the first bill that I had signed into law that provided lifetime protection for former presidents. And I did it, President Obama was president at the time, but we had George W. Bush, who was still a relatively young man. You still had Bill Clinton, you still had Jimmy Carter, you still had presidents who will, unfortunately, because of human nature and because there's always people with malevolent hearts that seek to do harm, they will always need to be protected. And so we changed the law. We changed the law to guarantee that former presidents have lifetime Secret Service protection. And aren't we glad we did that? Because the longer we live, the younger we elect presidents, the more need there will be. And is it expensive? Yes. Yes. Is it expensive to have Secret Service protection? Absolutely. Is it worth the cost of someone's life for which you can place no value on? Of course not. So yes, I get it. It's expensive. Lots of things are expensive, and we still do them because it's the right thing to do. Here's what I would ask you to do. Don't rely on me. Don't rely on people who don't like the decision that Judge Cannon reached and therefore think that she must somehow be corrupt or crooked because you happen to disagree. I got lots of rulings from judges that I disagreed with, and I never once viewed that judge as being corrupt. I may have disagreed. I may have thought that judge was wrong. But go read her opinion and then ask yourself, is there not a better way, if there is a conflict of interest, if the Attorney General and all the U.S. attorneys and all the career prosecutors at DOJ are not able to manage an investigation, is there not a better way than to have some regulation wherein an otherwise private citizen is given this enormous power with an unlimited budget to investigate leading presidential candidates? And I would be shocked, politics aside, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, bull moose, Whig, don't care. Is there not a better way of ensuring that we have the best, most proper investigation, but it's done by someone who has been vetted as highly as you can vet someone? The more power you give someone, the more they should be vetted. The more power you give someone, the more oversight that person should have. The more power you give someone, the more check there should be on that power. So read the opinion before you fall for what the left is doing now, which is vilifying a judge. And you will recall, sometimes people say, I hate to say I told you so. I actually never hate to say I told you so. It actually makes me feel good to say I told you so. But remember when the immunity opinion came out, and I encouraged you to read that opinion, Clarence Thomas devoted part of his concurring opinion on the validity of special counsel. How prescient was that in light of what happened today? The fact that he would take time to question the propriety, the authority of special counsel, given what Judge Cannon ruled today. So I will summarize this as succinctly as I can. There is no substitute for reading these opinions, these orders for yourself. Do not rely on headlines. Do not rely on pundits. Don't even rely on me, even though I try to be fair and I went to law school and I practiced law. Rely on your own eyes, your own intuition, your own sense of fairness. Read these opinions and orders for yourself. You may agree with the conclusion, you may disagree with the conclusion, but I don't think you're going to reach the conclusion that someone is corrupt simply because they happen to rule in a way different from the way in which you would have ruled. With that, I'll see you on Thursday for Mary Langston's podcast, and we will know who former President Trump, perhaps future President Trump's running mate, and who perhaps the future vice president of the United States will be. Until then, take care.